Listen to me, my friend, for I wish to share a story with you, one that begins with a bold, perhaps unsettling question. What if you discovered that the words you speak each day, casually and without much thought, could reveal more about your true nature than any grand deed or public claim of character? Indeed, the ancients believed that a person's speech, how he expresses his ideas, fears, and beliefs, lays bare the contents of his mind and the depth of his virtues. Suppose, then, that you realized there are phrases, certain declarations, that the wisest among us have learned never to utter, for they poison the soul and corrode our relationships. In this script, I intend to open up 8 of those fateful things that, from a Stoic perspective and from the vantage of other philosophical traditions, an intelligent man does not say. But be forewarned. Embracing these insights could force you to take a hard look in the mirror, to examine the hidden corners of your pride, your impatience, your insecurities, or your illusions. Now, if you are new here, please like the video and subscribe. Statistics show that only 15% of my audience is subscribed to the channel, so if this content has helped you in any way, I ask you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let me start by describing a scene from my younger years, an incident that I recall vividly, one that lit a small flame of realization within me. I was standing in the courtyard of a small academy, fresh out of a lesson on logic and rhetoric, feeling a flicker of pride at my newfound ability to reason and debate. A friend, or so I thought, approached with a sneer, mocking my occasional mispronunciation of a certain word. My hot-blooded response? A retort that soared out of my mouth before I'd even weighed its worth. I barked something along the lines of, "I'm never wrong about my pronunciation," accompanied by a defensive posture that signaled my insecurity far more than any real mastery of speech. An older onlooker, a man whose eyes shone with the calm of a life steeped in Stoicism, later pulled me aside. He said in a measured tone, "The words you choose in such moments reveal the strength or fragility of your mind. You gain no respect by declaring yourself immune to error." His remark, gentle though it was, stung me more than my friend's insult. It exposed how my own words had painted me as someone desperate to appear infallible, unwilling to own my vulnerabilities or learn from them. That was decades ago, but the lesson remained, simmering in my mind as I devoured the works of Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius. I came to see how each man has phrases that slip out unthinkingly, revealing not so much cunning or bravado as deep-seated illusions about who he is. And I began to see that being intelligent, in any meaningful sense, involves recognizing these illusions and refusing to indulge them in speech. The ancient Stoics taught that genuine wisdom is not about parading knowledge or winning arguments. It's about the alignment of one's inner convictions with the calm steadiness of virtue. Integrity, humility, patience, perseverance. Over time, I compiled a small mental list, statements I noticed wise men rarely, if ever, let escape their lips. Statements that, if uttered, usually betray a deeper mental weakness or confusion. Now, let me set the stakes for you. We live in an era of rapid discourse, short attention spans, and constant displays of vanity, be it on social media or in everyday chatter. If you dare to stand apart, to pursue a path of reason, restraint, and sincerity, you might find yourself under scrutiny. People might label you old-fashioned or too reserved, or assume you lack the flair and loud confidence that's so often celebrated. But trust me when I say that a man who cultivates stoic composure in speech, who avoids these 8 toxic declarations, radiates a quiet power that few can match. He doesn't need to bark about his greatness or dismiss others harshly to prove himself. He simply exists in a state of coherence between mind, word, and deed, unmoved by fleeting judgments. That coherence fosters respect that runs deeper than any immediate applause. Before we dive into each of the 8 statements, I must address something crucial. None of this is about becoming an emotionless shell. The Stoics never taught us to kill our feelings, only to guide them, to ensure they serve virtue rather than sabotage it. That means, if you're frustrated, if you're anxious, if you're even proud, acknowledge those feelings, but do not let them pour out into destructive utterances. By refusing certain phrases, you practice the discipline of self-control. Over time, controlling the tongue influences the heart itself, because habit shapes disposition. Speak with wisdom, and eventually, your mind follows suit, learning to maintain clarity under stress. Let me also be upfront about how I'll structure this script. I'll present each of the 8 statements that a truly intelligent man, guided by Stoic reflection, and possibly buttressed by other philosophical threads, does not say. But I won't simply rattle them off as bullet points. Instead, I'll share them in a narrative style, weaving in examples, Stoic logic, and the practical reason why each phrase is so corrosive. The result, I hope, is a coherent flow that not only reveals 8 things to avoid, but also explains how avoiding them can profoundly reshape your relationships, your sense of self, and your approach to adversity. Let's begin with the introduction to these 8 things, if only to spark your curiosity. Perhaps they involve disclaimers of one's own infallibility, or admissions of pure helplessness, or broad condemnations of others that speak more of arrogance than truth. You might guess that statements like, "I'm always right," or "I don't need anybody," are among them, and you would not be far off. But let me tell you a small secret. Each of these statements is a symptom of a deeper mental stance, a posture that was a man of the calm strength that Stoic virtue fosters. By dissecting them, we lay bare those stances: fear, vanity, sloth, blame-shifting, among others, and that dissection is the first step to curing the malady. Why should you care about all this? Because if you're a man who seeks more from life than ephemeral thrills, if you crave real confidence rather than surface bravado, if you aim to cultivate respect that is earned by your solidity of character rather than cunning manipulation, then your words must align with those aims. And if, out of habit or social conditioning, you frequently utter these self-defeating or self-aggrandizing phrases, you sabotage yourself in ways that might not be obvious at first. You sow seeds of mistrust in those who listen. You shape your inner narrative around illusions, and you close doors to personal growth. In an age where so many chase after the ephemeral applause of quick jokes or harsh put-downs, stepping away from such talk can be a radical, dignifying act. Nor is this about stifling your wit or your ability to stand up for yourself. On the contrary, learning to speak from a Stoic vantage fosters sharper, more incisive dialogue. When you remove from your repertoire the empty declarations that feed anger, fear, or ego, you become more capable of expressing genuine humor, genuine passion, genuine debate. You're less encumbered by the need to puff up or tear down. That sense of internal freedom, so prized by the Stoics, emerges because you cease performing for others, or for your own fragile self-esteem, and start speaking from a well of calm conviction. Let me also position this text as the script for a video in which I, an older soul who has walked the road of Stoic practice for decades, Share these insights as though we were sitting side by side on a bench near a quiet garden. You might picture me with gray hair and a thoughtful gaze, not lording knowledge over you, but offering a friendly, paternal reflection. Throughout the next segments, I'll slip into a deeper exposition of each phrase, weaving in anecdotes, personal confessions, Stoic references, and a few cautionary tales from those who learned too late that words shape destiny. My wish is that you remain engaged as I lay out each subtle trap and the philosophical rationale for why an intelligent, Stoic-minded man refuses to speak such illusions. And yes, illusions is the right word, because each of these 8 statements arises from a misjudgment, a warped lens through which we view ourselves or the world around us. They might momentarily feel good to say, like a shield to ward off self-doubt or a sword to lash out at others, but they ultimately betray us, revealing insecurities and corroding the respect we hope to command. The Stoic sees illusions for what they are and gently but firmly casts them aside. In their place, he fosters clarity. I own my mistakes. I remain open to growth. I do not define my worth by what others think or say. We'll begin with the first statement in the next part of the script. But let me give you a small teaser. It deals with the false notion of total helplessness, a phrase that slides out of the mouth of many men who have either lost confidence or never cultivated it. The Stoic approach reveals how that phrase cements a victim mindset that no man of reason or fortitude wishes to inhabit. We'll explore how to replace it with a quiet acceptance of partial control, differentiating what is truly impossible from what is simply challenging, and thus maintain a posture of constructive effort. Yes, there's an irony here. People often speak these harmful statements believing they either protect their image or express authenticity. But in truth, each statement typically masks deeper illusions that hamper authenticity. The Stoic remedy is not to feign perfection, rather to ground oneself in humbler truths. You'll see how this humility, far from making you appear weak, can lend you an unshakable aura of confidence. For a man who acknowledges his limits, or welcomes the possibility of being wrong, or accepts that he may need help, ironically projects more command of life than the one who insists he's always right, never changing, never to blame, or above the need for assistance. Let me also address a potential misunderstanding. These 8 things are not arbitrary rules from some dusty code of old. They're gleaned from patterns observed over centuries, patterns recognized by philosophers, moralists, even cunning social observers who know how swiftly a slip of the tongue can unravel a facade of strength. The Stoics in particular taught that the words we speak often reflect our mental states, and that our mental states in turn are shaped by repeated speech. So if you vow never to utter these illusions, you're effectively training your mind to see them as illusions, thereby freeing yourself from their grip. Finally, let me set up the roadmap for the remainder of this script. I'll continue in part 2 by unveiling the first 4 statements, painting them in vivid detail, referencing Stoic logic, weaving in an anecdote or 2 for each. Then, in part 3, I'll tackle the remaining 4 statements, plus a concluding reflection on how Stoicism as a living practice can unify your approach to speech, conduct, and self-reflection. By the end, I intend for you to have a crisp mental checklist, a gentle alarm that chimes whenever you feel tempted to say something like, "I never need help," or "It's not my fault, it's all on him." And perhaps you'll catch your breath, see through the facade, and choose a different path, one that signals real intelligence, real Stoic virtue. Yes, intelligence in this context isn't about IQ or academic accolades. It's about discerning the illusions that sabotage authenticity. An intelligent man, in the Stoic sense, is one who perceives the labyrinth of pride, fear, envy, and reflexive self-defense that so many get lost in, and methodically refuses to feed it with his words. That refusal is quiet but transformative. And trust me, once you start practicing it, you'll notice subtle changes in how people react to you. They might sense that you don't posture or deflect blame, that you show open-mindedness without abdicating your principles. Over time, your words command more weight because they stem from self-control rather than impulse. This, I believe, is part of the intangible reward Stoics speak of, an inner alignment that fosters outer respect, not forced, but naturally earned. With that, I invite you to join me in Part 2, where we'll walk through the first 4 statements. Prepare for a candid exploration. Perhaps you've uttered them in the past. I know I have. Perhaps you still do. That's not a reason for shame. It's an opportunity to refine your approach, to peel back layers of old habits, and to let your speech mirror the thoughtful, resilient man you strive to be. Let us then turn the page, stepping further into this Stoic perspective on how an intelligent man, grounded in virtue, chooses his words with care and never stoops to illusions that corrode the dignity of his character. Picture me seated beneath an old olive tree, the late afternoon sun casting a warm light over the worn pages of my favorite Stoic texts. I've had my share of restless nights thinking about the things men say, often without realizing the extent to which their words reveal hidden frailties or illusions. In the previous part of this script, we set the stage. An intelligent man, guided by a Stoic mindset or similar philosophies of self-mastery, must be vigilant about what slips from his tongue. Now, let's explore the first 4 of those insidious statements he should never utter. Think of each one as a doorway into a subtle mental trap, where pride, fear, or laziness can seize control. My hope is that by shining a steady light on these traps, you can choose more carefully how you speak and, in so doing, reshape your inner narrative for the better. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a scene of conflict. 2 individuals stand face to face, tension thick in the air. One is visibly frustrated, pointing an accusatory finger, while the other protests in an anxious tone. "It's not my fault. It's all on you." This is where we begin. Because among the illusions that can slip from a man's mouth, one of the most common is that reflexive absolution of personal responsibility. If you recall from our opening reflections, the Stoics urge us to examine our part in every situation, to see whether we might be complicit, if not in creating a problem, then in our reaction to it. Yet, so many men are quick to declare that nothing is their fault, that the blame lies entirely with others, as though disclaiming any role in adversity. Picture a workplace scenario. A project fails to meet its deadline, tensions rise, and one team member immediately defends himself by proclaiming, "Don't look at me. I did nothing wrong. It's so-and-so's incompetence, or the budget was messed up. I'm blameless here." That statement might momentarily shield him from scrutiny, but it also signals to everyone listening that he's unwilling to reflect on how he might have contributed to the fiasco, or how he might have stepped in to prevent it. A man guided by Stoic insight recognizes that while external forces often shape outcomes, we always have some thread of control or influence. Even if our share of responsibility is small, a willingness to own it demonstrates integrity and fosters trust. let me share a personal anecdote. In my younger days, I found myself overseeing a community initiative that ultimately collapsed. In truth, many factors doomed it: lack of resources, poor timing, the reluctance of certain partners. But I also realized that I'd been naive about scoping the initiative's feasibility, that I'd avoided uncomfortable discussions which might have flagged problems earlier. Yet my initial instinct was to stand before the committee and exclaim that I'd been sabotaged by circumstances outside my control. I uttered the dreaded words, "It's not my fault," which not only rang hollow to those who'd witnessed my oversights, but also shielded me from learning from the experience. It was only when I read a passage in Epictetus about how we can't dictate external events, but can control our judgments and preparations, that I recognized my error. Accepting even partial responsibility is liberating. It puts you in the driver's seat for future improvement, rather than leaving you passively at the mercy of fate. Why is it then that a man might reflexively deny all blame? Often it's fear. Fear of losing face. Fear that admitting flaws will undermine his image of competence. But ironically, in the eyes of discerning onlookers, disclaiming all fault can make you appear weaker, more desperate. The Stoic stance is not to shoulder blame that truly doesn't belong to you, but to examine a situation honestly, to see if there was any moment you could have intervened, any sign you neglected, any constructive step left untaken. Owning that piece, however small, transforms a crisis into a lesson. Seneca wrote extensively on how adversity can be our greatest teacher, but only if we meet it head-on, acknowledging our part rather than scapegoating or evading. Consider how, in practical terms, you might replace the phrase, "It's not my fault," with something more stoic. Instead of disclaiming responsibility, you might say, "We faced unexpected obstacles, but I see where my actions fell short. Next time, I'll address those areas immediately." Notice how different that sounds. The second approach signals readiness to learn, confidence in your ability to adapt, and an absence of denial or shame. People who hear this from you often respond positively because they see someone who values truth over ego. Paradoxically, admitting a partial role in a setback can boost your long-term credibility. And if it truly isn't your fault at all, you can still articulate the facts calmly, without fury or a victim's lament. I see that external factors led to this outcome, and though I tried, I found no leverage to change it. That's also Stoic, focusing on how your efforts met the boundary of external reality. When you reflect on this "it's not my fault" reflex, you uncover illusions about control and self-protection. The Stoic remedy is to shift from blaming or disclaiming to calmly analyzing cause and effect, your portion included. Over time, this fosters maturity, trust, and a greater sense of agency in your own life. So the first statement an intelligent man doesn't say, under Stoic counsel, is that reflex cry of innocence the instant trouble appears. Instead, he examines the scene, acknowledges his portion of the tapestry, and responds with accountability or calm acceptance. Now, let us turn to the second statement. I never make mistakes. The moment these words leave your lips, you reveal a deep insecurity and an unwillingness to confront your humanity. Indeed, no man of any genuine wisdom claims infallibility. If anything, the Stoic tradition underscores how prone we are to error, driven by passions, illusions, or incomplete knowledge. Marcus Aurelius himself wrote each night in his journal about the lapses he'd noticed in his behavior or judgments. If an emperor, burdened with power and revered by many, took time to critique his own failings daily, how can any of us justify a declaration of, "I never err"? Let me recall a case from my earlier teaching days. I had a bright student who excelled in logic puzzles, mathematics, and rhetorical sparring. He was widely praised to the point that he began to relish his reputation for correctness. One day, in a debate club, he uttered the fatal line, "I'm never wrong about my logic." His peers took that as a challenge, and sure enough, within minutes, someone pointed out a subtle flaw in one of his premises. His immediate reaction was denial, insisting they'd misunderstood, until, backed into a corner by the facts, he had no choice but to concede. The humbling was painful, more so because of his grandiose claim. Had he simply said, "I believe I'm correct, but I'm open to scrutiny," the revelation of the flaw would have felt less humiliating. The Stoic approach is precisely that. We can stand confidently in what we believe, but remain open to correction, always mindful that to be human is to stumble. Why do men sometimes declare they never make mistakes? Often it's a shield, a way to fend off vulnerability. They think, if I admit mistakes, I'll appear weak or incompetent. But Stoic philosophy flips this assumption. Acknowledging your capacity for error is a sign of real self-awareness and resilience. It means you're not hiding behind the facade of perfection. In fact, refusing to let the words, "I never make mistakes," escape your mouth signals to others that you are wise enough to keep your ego in check. People will trust your counsel more because they see you as someone who tests his ideas, updates them when proven wrong, and refuses to cling to illusions. That willingness to course correct, ironically, leads to fewer mistakes over time, since you're not stuck defending a flawed position out of pride. Now, from a Stoic vantage, the deeper reason never to claim infallibility is that it's a direct violation of the principle of living in alignment with reality. A fundamental Stoic idea is that we must see the world and ourselves as they truly are, not as we wish them to be. In reality, all mortals err. By suggesting you don't, you place yourself above this fundamental human condition, inadvertently inviting conflict with truth. Epictetus warns that illusions of superiority only breed eventual humiliation. A starker way of putting it might be, if you walk around proclaiming, "I never get things wrong," the universe or the Stoic sense of cosmic order has a way of humbling you. Not out of spite, but because truth eventually surfaces. Practically, how do you guard your tongue here? If you catch yourself about to declare you're always right or never in error, consider adopting a more measured statement. I've done my best with the knowledge I have. If I'm missing something, I welcome clarification. This approach fosters growth and invites collaboration rather than competition. It underscores the Stoic notion that each day is an opportunity to refine your understanding. People often find such humility refreshing, a contrast to the boastfulness that saturates modern discourse. Over time, you'll notice that far from making you look weak, it enhances the respect people accord you because they sense authenticity. Another corollary to "I never make mistakes" is the moment someone actually corners you with evidence that you have indeed made an error. If you cling to your denial, you become entangled in rationalizations, further entrenching yourself in a lie. The Stoic mindset is to relinquish that entrenchment. This might sting your pride momentarily, but it liberates you from the burden of lying to yourself and others. Nothing is more mentally exhausting than constantly upholding a false facade of perfection. By acknowledging the slip, you remain on a path that's anchored in reality and guided by virtue, two pillars of Stoic philosophy. Now, let us move to the third statement. "I can't change." That phrase, in some ways, is a direct contradiction to the essence of Stoic wisdom. For the Stoics believed that, while external events often lie beyond our command, our own moral and mental development is indeed within our power to shape. The claim, "I can't change," arises from a defeatist mindset that surrenders to inertia or laziness. Think of how many times you've heard someone say, "I've always been quick-tempered. That's just who I am." Or, "I'm too set in my ways to learn new habits." The Stoic retort is that your capacity for growth endures as long as you draw breath. Indeed, Marcus Aurelius reminds himself repeatedly that life is short, but within that span, daily improvement is possible if we exert the will to shape our character. Allow me to share a story from a dear friend of mine, a man once notorious for his brash, impulsive outbursts. He claimed to be a hot-headed person by nature, as though it were fixed in his very bones. But after a series of personal failings, broken relationships, regrettable conflicts, he found himself reading Stoic texts out of sheer desperation. Over months, he began practicing the Stoic pause before speaking, reflecting each evening on his outbursts, planning how he'd handle similar irritations the next day. Slowly, like the patient forging of steel, his temperament softened. He remained passionate, but learned to direct that fire constructively. One day, I heard him say, "It seems I was wrong to label myself unchangeable. I've proven that I can evolve." That shift not only improved his relationships, but also deepened his self-respect. He realized that "I can't change" was never a truth. It was an excuse that locked him into harmful patterns. Yet men often proclaim "I can't change" as a shield against the effort or discomfort of growth. Perhaps they dread the vulnerability of trying and failing publicly, or they worry that changing might alienate them from a certain social circle. However, Stoic logic pushes us to see such worry as misguided. Yes, change can be uncomfortable, but choosing stagnation out of fear is a far heavier burden to bear. Moreover, if your environment punishes your attempts at self-betterment, might it be time to question whether that environment aligns with your highest aspirations? Stoicism doesn't command us to sever all ties whenever we face adversity, but it does advocate living in harmony with our values, even if it means adjusting our social sphere. Keep in mind that proclaiming "I can't change" also robs you of accountability. If you brand your flaws as unalterable, you give yourself permission to remain stuck, harming others or yourself with the same cycle of mistakes. This is an abdication of moral agency that no Stoic would endorse. Instead, Stoic practice suggests acknowledging a flaw, gently working on it day after day, never expecting instant perfection but refusing to resign yourself to a "that's just me" cynicism. Over time, the repeated small efforts can yield profound transformations, surprising even yourself. Just because the shift may not be easy or rapid doesn't mean it's not feasible. So, if you catch yourself about to say, "I can't change," try pivoting to something like, "Change is difficult, and I haven't succeeded yet, but I'm willing to keep working on it." That subtle shift reclaims your agency, signals humility, and invites progress. It aligns with the Stoic notion that we are each day forging our character like an artisan forging metal, shaping it into something more refined. Indeed, the entire Stoic path is about harnessing your capacity to reshape your thoughts, your choices, and thereby your destiny. Now we arrive at the fourth statement for this part. I never need help. This, too, is a common refrain, especially among those who idolize self-reliance to a fault. Let me be clear. Stoicism does teach self-sufficiency in emotional terms, encouraging us not to hinge our well-being on external approval or fleeting desires. But it never instructs us to reject assistance or collaboration outright. On the contrary, the Stoics recognized we are social creatures, part of a larger community. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly wrote that we exist for the sake of each other, that we flourish in connection, not in isolation. Proclaiming, "I never need help," suggests a fear of appearing weak, as though seeking support from others were a blemish on your independence. But true Stoic strength is found in recognizing where your control ends, or where your ability might be enhanced by guidance, resources, or insight from others. Consider how a father passes wisdom to a son, or how a craftsman learns from an experienced mentor. None of these scenarios betray Stoic virtue. On the contrary, they exemplify it, because you set aside prideful illusions and open yourself to learning or receiving. Epictetus began life as a slave, reliant on the goodwill of certain individuals who saw potential in him. Had he clung to, "I don't need help," he might never have gained his freedom or developed his remarkable philosophy. Let me recount a personal memory. In a phase of my career, I took on too many projects, determined to prove I could handle them alone. I resisted help because I thought accepting it would undermine the perception of my capability. Predictably, I became overwhelmed. Deadlines piled up, quality faltered, and I risked a complete burnout. A friend, an older man well versed in Stoic logic, asked why I refused to delegate or ask for assistance from eager colleagues. I mumbled something about not wanting to burden others, but he saw through that. It was my pride. Eventually, I ceded some tasks, found relief, and discovered that my connections with those colleagues grew stronger through collaboration. The result was better output and a more balanced mind. In Stoic terms, I recognized that "I never need help" was a mask for my ego. By discarding it, I acted more rationally, more in line with wisdom. When you say, "I never need help," you also risk missing out on opportunities for synergy, where multiple minds or multiple hands can achieve far more than one man struggling in solitude. The Stoic tradition, while championing personal responsibility, is not a hymn to lone wolf isolation. Rather, it's about clarity in deciding what you can handle personally versus what requires collective effort. For instance, Stoics see that your inner judgments are yours to manage, but building a house or launching a major enterprise might well be a team endeavor. Admitting that you need the specialized talents of others is a mark of intelligence, not weakness, revealing that your sense of self doesn't hinge on doing everything single-handedly. Hence, we realize that a Stoic approach to self-reliance is nuanced. You remain emotionally self-contained, meaning your mood doesn't wildly swing based on external praise or scorn, but you remain pragmatically open to the help of others in tasks or knowledge. The test is to do so without losing your moral autonomy. You don't become dependent on constant validation or direction from others. You simply harness resources and expertise, recognizing that you are part of a larger web of relationships. That fosters humility, cooperation, and, ironically, greater success in your chosen endeavors. Meanwhile, if you stubbornly cling to "I never need help," you might get stuck, waste time, or sabotage your own growth out of fear that requesting assistance equates to incompetence. So we see how each of these four illusions, "It's not my fault," "I never make mistakes," "I can't change," and "I never need help," stems from a mix of insecurity and misguided pride. They represent a refusal to face reality. the reality that we all share some responsibility in life's outcomes, that we do err from time to time, that we can transform ourselves, and that we benefit from the insight or support of others. In Stoic language, these illusions are dissonant with nature's order, which includes continuous adaptation, mutual interdependence, and the capacity for moral improvement. The man who repeats these illusions might feel a temporary relief. He escapes blame. He avoids self-confrontation. He maintains a pretense of unassailable strength. But that relief is hollow. The illusions keep him stuck, hamper genuine respect, and betray a brittle ego. Now, you might ask, how do we break free from these illusions if they've become habits? The Stoics propose consistent reflection and gentle correction. Each evening, you might replay your day's conversations in your mind or in a journal, noting moments when you drifted into disclaiming blame, claiming infallibility, or resisting help. Did you find yourself thinking, "I can't change, so why bother?" Identify that. Observe how it felt in your body, how your mind reacted. Then commit to a more honest approach next time. Over weeks, these illusions will surface less frequently, and your speech will align more faithfully with reality and humility. Keep in mind that Stoic wisdom does not ask you to become self-abasing or timid. It demands you stand firmly in truth, which includes acknowledging your strengths, your potential for development, and your rightful boundaries. You can say, "I did my part, and I see where I can improve," or "I'm proud of what I accomplished, yet I recognize I'm still learning," or "I see I've been consistent in this character trait for years, but I'm open to evolving." That kind of language fosters genuine confidence and invites genuine collaboration. It's worlds apart from the illusions we've discussed, illusions that, ironically, strive to project confidence but often come across as defensive or fragile. Let us imagine, for a moment, the intangible benefits you reap by excluding these 4 statements from your vocabulary. You'll likely find that conversations flow with less friction, because people sense your openness to truth rather than a rigid stance of infallibility or blame shifting. You'll notice that moments of adversity don't provoke the same surge of stress, because you've grown comfortable facing your share of responsibility or acknowledging you might fail but can still adapt. Above all, you'll feel the freedom that arises when your words reflect a stable, introspective core, not a scramble to maintain an image. This freedom is a hallmark of Stoic practice, a sense that you are governed by reason and virtue rather than by ephemeral pride or fear. And so we come to the conclusion of this segment. We've peeled back the first 4 illusions, each representing a barrier to authentic strength and Stoic clarity. It's not my fault. I never make mistakes. I can't change. And I never need help might roll off the tongue with ease in stressful or prideful situations, but they reveal mental traps that shackle you more than they protect you. Let me gently encourage you to reflect. Do you find yourself resorting to any of these phrases? Do you sense the impulse to disclaim blame, or to proclaim your immunity to error, or to cling to the notion that you're set in stone, or that you must always go it alone? If so, treat that realization not as cause for guilt, but as an invitation to shift your perspective. In the final part, we'll explore the remaining 4 illusions, each one a subtle saboteur of reason, each one a threat to the Stoic ideal of living in harmony with reality and virtue. We'll then tie everything together with a reflection on how to integrate these insights into a cohesive daily practice so that your words day by day align with the intelligence you strive to embody. Remember, intelligence, from a Stoic lens, is as much about moral insight as it is about quick wit or mental acuity. And few things hamper moral insight more than illusions about blame, infallibility, immutability, or total self-sufficiency. Now, some exciting news. Our channel now offers a members club. By joining it, you'll unlock exclusive benefits, deeper content dives, and personal insights. Join us on this journey, and let's build a meaningful life together. And I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write better every day so I know you reached this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I have linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today, and will also help you achieve a Stoic mindset. So let us close this second part with a reminder that each time you catch yourself before uttering these illusions, you strengthen your Stoic muscle. You become a little more aware, a little more grounded in humility and truth. That shift might be imperceptible in a single moment, but over many months, it transforms the man you are. As we step forward to part 3, prepare to examine 4 additional illusions that can slip into speech, illusions that hamper thoughtful living. By the end, you'll have encountered the full set of 8, forming a robust warning sign in your mind each time you feel them on the tip of your tongue. And in resisting them, you carve out a place for sincerity, rational self-ownership, and the dignity that only the truly free can claim. Imagine me once more, this time seated inside a modest study, the walls lined with worn, leather-bound texts from across the centuries, Stoic treatises, ancient moral works, and a few volumes of Eastern philosophy that echo similar truths about discipline and humility. The air smells faintly of old parchment, and the late afternoon sun slants through the window. Here is where we complete our exploration of the 8 toxic statements that a truly intelligent man, one guided by reason, self-mastery, and a sense of deeper virtue, would never utter. In the first parts of this script, we uncovered 4 illusions that can slip from a man's mouth. It's not my fault. I never make mistakes. I can't change. And I never need help. Each of these phrases reveals a fragile ego masquerading as certainty, a refusal to confront the humbling realities of life. Yet there are still 4 more illusions lurking in the corners of everyday speech, phrases that you might hear in passing, or catch yourself muttering when pride or fear tightens its grip. Think of them as the final pieces of a puzzle that, once assembled, display the full picture of how Stoic wisdom would have us guard our tongues. In naming these illusions, we also name the insecurities behind them, thereby diminishing their power. The result, if you choose to heed these warnings, is a self far less prone to the collisions of ego and far more aligned with the serenity that Stoicism, and indeed most profound philosophies, invite us to cultivate. Let us begin with the 5th statement. I'm too busy for that. At first glance, it may seem harmless, even mundane. After all, don't we live in an age of relentless demands on our time? Work deadlines, familial obligations, social invitations, personal projects. Yes, schedules can be tight. But consider the subtle message behind this phrase. It often implies that your time is so consumed by immediate tasks that you cannot afford to make room for something else. Sometimes an opportunity that might enrich you, a moment of connection, or a chance to address a lingering issue. Rather than acknowledging that you are choosing to prioritize certain things, you declare you have no choice at all, that your time is an unyielding external constraint. From a Stoic vantage, this is a deception. The Stoics remind us that while external demands exist, we ultimately allocate our energy according to our values. When you proclaim, "I'm too busy for that," you might be avoiding introspection on why you're declining the request or missing the opportunity. Perhaps you're fearful of trying something unfamiliar, or you're unwilling to reorganize your schedule to accommodate something you deem less urgent. Rather than owning that decision, you shift it onto the scapegoat of busyness. The problem is that once you adopt that phrase reflexively, you can shut yourself off from experiences that foster growth, or from tasks that might solve deeper problems, or from emotional responsibilities like checking in on a friend. I recall a friend whose default response to nearly every suggestion was, "I don't have time." At first, I took it at face value, assuming he was truly overwhelmed. But as weeks turned into months, it became evident he had ample hours to scroll through social media, to dabble in trivial pursuits, or to watch lengthy sports broadcasts. Stoic reflection reveals that the real meaning behind "I'm too busy" is often "I'm choosing other activities as more important or more comfortable." Indeed, the Stoics valued the principle of conscious choice. Each day we have segments of time to allocate. If you say, "I'm too busy," you risk acting as if fate has shackled your hours, when in reality you have some measure of power to reorder them. More damaging still, the phrase can degrade relationships. When you tell a loved one you're too busy to attend an important milestone or help with a pressing favor, you imply that they're not significant enough to warrant rearranging your priorities. Over time, such words breed resentment or distance, precisely because the Stoic concept of living in accord with virtue includes the duty we owe to those we care about. This doesn't mean you must say yes to every request. On the contrary, Stoic clarity helps you set boundaries with honesty. "I'm focusing on these commitments right now and can't take on another, but here's what I can do," is far more transparent than the blanket excuse of having no time. Another angle is that "I'm too busy for that" can sabotage personal development. Perhaps you're invited to learn a new skill, pursue a creative venture, or explore a form of self-improvement. If your reflex is to claim you're too busy, you might remain in a stagnant routine. Stoicism frames life as an ongoing opportunity to refine your mind and your character, not a treadmill that leaves no room for enrichment. A Stoic approach would be, "I must weigh whether this new pursuit aligns with my goals and values. If it does, can I set aside certain lesser tasks to make room? If it doesn't align, I should be honest about that, rather than citing lack of time as a universal barrier." So the wise man avoids proclaiming, "I'm too busy" as a shield. Instead, he might say, "I'm choosing not to engage in that right now, because I've prioritized these other responsibilities or values." This replaces the illusion of helplessness with accountability. He stands by his decision rather than feigning that external busyness compels him. Over time, such honesty fosters better self-management and deeper respect from others, who see that your rejections are sincere choices rather than dismissive brush-offs. Shifting now to the sixth statement, "I'm better than everyone else." Perhaps you rarely hear it uttered so plainly, but variations abound. "No one here is on my level." "I'm far more capable than those around me." "People just don't measure up to my standards." Stoics would call such talk a red flag for arrogance, a puffed-up sense of superiority that ironically betrays insecurity. For if you were genuinely secure in your abilities or virtues, you wouldn't need to broadcast your supremacy over others. You'd let your deeds, your calm presence, and your consistent character speak on your behalf. Let me illustrate with a cautionary tale. I once knew a colleague who prided himself on being the most accomplished mind in the room. He made it no secret, often dropping lines about how everyone else had so much to learn from him. At first, a few were impressed by his boldness, but soon people noticed how he bristled at suggestions or critiques. He took any disagreement as a personal affront, lashing out with condescension. Over time, that arrogance isolated him from meaningful collaboration, and ironically, led to stagnation in his own growth. The Stoics, by contrast, counsel humility. No matter your skill, there is always more to learn. Epictetus, once a slave, became a revered teacher precisely because he recognized he was a student of life, forever open to deeper truth. Moreover, the phrase, "I'm better than everyone else," blinds you to others' hidden expertise. Stoic logic notes that every person has unique strengths or vantage points that can contribute to a shared endeavor. If you dismiss the entire group as inferior, you miss those insights, stunting your own progress. In a broader sense, you also sow discord, because such an attitude fosters resentment and hurt. Stoicism emphasizes social synergy, the idea that we're meant to work with one another in pursuit of virtue and the common good. Proclaiming your superiority sets you apart in a destructive way, undermining that synergy. Hence, a Stoic-minded man would never brag about being above everyone else. If he truly excels in an area, he can demonstrate it through consistent excellence and gracious mentorship, not through haughty words. When he notices he is more skilled, he remains mindful that others might surpass him in different domains. He might say, "I've studied this field deeply, so I'm confident in what I know," but he won't degrade his peers or treat them as lesser beings. Such modest confidence invites respect rather than envy or antagonism, aligning with the Stoic virtue of justice, giving others their due recognition and not inflating your own stature beyond measure. We move now to the seventh statement. You're worthless. This might seem the opposite of "I'm better than everyone else," but in practice it often arises from the same root. A desire to elevate oneself by tearing another down. Telling someone you're worthless, or you contribute nothing, or any variant that denies their intrinsic dignity is a stark violation of Stoic ethics. For the Stoics, every individual is part of the universal city of humankind. No person is truly worthless. Each has some capacity for reason, for growth, for contributing. If they fail or act poorly, Stoicism suggests compassion or guidance rather than condemnation of their entire being. Think of how quickly an insult like "you're worthless" can escalate a conflict. It's not a constructive critique or an attempt to show a path to improvement. It's a blunt assault on someone's self-regard, essentially saying they have no place among the living. Such a statement is a prime example of speech that fosters harm rather than virtue. A Stoic approach to conflict or frustration with another's failings would be to address the specific behavior. That action was misguided. This approach isn't working, or we need to see a better effort from you. But you refrain from attacking the person's inherent value. The Stoics believed that reason and virtue lie dormant in all of us to some degree, and that through counsel or self-reflection, we can awaken them. Dismissing a person entirely as worthless denies the possibility of redemption or growth, which Stoic thinkers held to be ever-present. Moreover, saying "you're worthless" ironically reveals a momentary abdication of your own Stoic composure. You let anger or contempt guide your words, forgetting that you too are fallible and have your own blind spots. In that sense, you do violence not just to the target of your insult, but to your own character. You stoop to a level of verbal aggression that, once the heat of the moment passes, may leave you ashamed, or at least it should if you reflect with Stoic honesty. Let me share a brief memory. Years ago, I overheard a respected mentor, known for his patience, break down in a heated argument and bark at a subordinate, "You're useless to me." The hush that followed was profound, not because the subordinate felt destroyed, but because everyone realized the mentor had just trampled his own guiding principles in a flash of rage. Days later, he apologized publicly, citing Stoic logic. I allowed my emotion to overshadow reason, and in doing so, I harmed both of us. If you do find yourself brimming with frustration at someone's repeated errors or negative impact, Stoic practice suggests you can either remove yourself from that dynamic, address the specific issue calmly, or, if it's your responsibility, guide them toward improvement. But you never degrade them to nothingness. That fosters neither justice nor wisdom. Over time, the habit of refusing to speak such words reshapes how you perceive others. You begin to see them as complex, flawed beings, like yourself, capable of growth or at least deserving of dignity by virtue of their shared humanity. That perspective is more in line with Stoic compassion, a gentler stance that ironically yields better results than condemnation. Finally, we arrive at the 8th statement. I'll never forgive you. This phrase might well emerge in moments of deep betrayal, heartbreak, or anger. It can feel justified. Someone has caused you real harm, trampled your trust, or shattered something precious. To say, "I'll never forgive you," is to vow eternal resentment, to lock yourself into a posture of irredeemable anger toward the offender. Many see it as a display of strength, a refusal to let the offender off the hook. Yet, from a Stoic perspective, it's a self-inflicted wound that keeps bitterness alive, eroding your tranquility. Stoicism does not condone moral complacency, nor does it say you must forget or allow repeated harm. But it does teach that harboring hatred or revenge in your heart chains you to the event, letting the offender's action define your emotional state indefinitely. Recall how Epictetus and Seneca, among others, emphasized the necessity of emotional release for one's own well-being. If someone has wronged you gravely, you can set boundaries or pursue just recourse. But to vow never to forgive often leads you to replay the offense in your mind, fueling negative passions. In Stoic terms, you continue to give the offender power over your peace. By refusing to let go, you keep the wound open, preventing it from healing. Forgiveness, in a Stoic sense, doesn't mean condoning or forgetting wrongdoing. It means releasing your emotional enslavement to the wrongdoing. You see that your resentment, if nurtured, does you more harm than the original offense. You might choose never to trust that person again, or to maintain distance, but you do so calmly, without a vow of perpetual grudge. That vow only cements a state of anger that Stoicism regards as destructive to your moral and mental clarity. An acquaintance of mine once carried an intense grudge against a former business partner who betrayed him. For years, he'd mention how he'd never forgive that individual, how he'd cherish the hatred. Yet what I saw was a man who rarely smiled, whose sense of joy had withered under the weight of that bitterness. He might have felt strong for never relenting, but in truth, he seemed captive to a memory that overshadowed his present. It was only when he encountered Stoic teachings on letting go, on prioritizing his own serenity, that he learned to release that vow of no forgiveness. He didn't reconcile with the betrayer, but he decided to let the past event remain in the past. In doing so, he found a measure of freedom. That shift exemplifies the Stoic move from clinging to vengeance to embracing emotional self-determination. In practical terms, you might find yourself on the brink of telling someone, "I'll never forgive you," because of their offense. The Stoic alternative is, "I am deeply hurt and I may not trust you again, but I won't carry hate in my heart. I'll let this event rest and move forward with my life." That approach doesn't deny the severity of the hurt, but it refuses to feed destructive bitterness. Let me be clear. Stoicism doesn't trivialize wrongdoing. It simply urges that your internal state not be consumed by fury or rancor. In releasing that vow of non-forgiveness, you create space for healing, growth, and your own peace, an approach that honors the Stoic principle of focusing on what truly lies within your control, namely your reaction and emotional posture, rather than the past deed itself. We've now named the final 4 illusions. I'm too busy for that, I'm better than everyone else, you're worthless, and I'll never forgive you. As with the earlier 4, each arises from a place of fear, pride, or lack of introspection. Each fosters disharmony in your relationships, in your sense of self, and in your alignment with Stoic virtues. None of these illusions convey real strength. Instead, they mask vulnerabilities or direct hostility outward, fueling conflict or stunted growth. Let me piece them together. 1. I'm too busy for that. A camouflage for refusing to reorganize priorities or face new opportunities. It implies helplessness regarding time, rather than honest choice or discussion of values. 2. I'm better than everyone else. A display of arrogance that signals insecurity and prevents you from benefiting from others' perspectives or forging respectful bonds. 3. You're worthless. A verbal assault that denies another person's inherent dignity, revealing more about your anger or contempt than their supposed failings. 4. I'll never forgive you. A vow of perpetual resentment, which poisons your own well-being and locks you into an emotional prison of ongoing hostility. Now, consider all 8 illusions in one grand scope. From Part 2, we had, "It's not my fault," "I never make mistakes," "I can't change," and "I never need help." We can see how each pair resonates with a deeper theme. For instance, refusing help and proclaiming you're superior might spring from the same root of pride. Declaring you can't change or that you're always too busy might reflect a fear of adapting or confronting new challenges. Blaming everyone else or insulting them as worthless are just flip sides of the same blame game. All revolve around illusions that hamper genuine Stoic living. Living in accordance with reason, virtue, and a transparent sense of self. So, how do we integrate these lessons into daily practice? As I've reiterated, Stoicism is not just a set of concepts, but a lived discipline. Reflect on the illusions that feel most familiar to you. Maybe you frequently catch yourself disclaiming blame, or maybe you've nurtured an unspoken pride that you're above those around you. Or perhaps you avoid new opportunities by claiming busyness, or hold on to grudges by refusing to forgive. Identify your personal Achilles heel. Over the next weeks, monitor how often you slip into that statement, whether out loud or in your inner dialogue. Then, each evening, note the context. What triggered it? Was it anger, a desire to appear strong, a fear of vulnerability? Once you see the pattern, practice a mindful pause. Next time the impulse arises, replace the illusion with a more Stoic alternative. If your reflex is, "It's not my fault," try calmly stating, I see that multiple factors played a role, including ones I could have influenced. If you'd normally say, "I'll never forgive you," substitute a quiet expression of how you feel hurt but won't chain yourself to perpetual rage. The shift may feel awkward initially, but with repetition, you'll find new mental pathways forming. As you refine this self-awareness, keep the Stoic virtues in mind. Wisdom, the pursuit of truth, including your own flaws or strengths. Courage, the willingness to face discomfort, be it admitting mistakes or forgiving someone. Justice, fair treatment of others, acknowledging each person's humanity. And temperance, the self-control not to spew illusions that sabotage reason or degrade relationships. You'll see that avoiding these 8 phrases is not just a surface-level trick, it's a gateway to enacting those virtues day by day. In tandem, you might cultivate morning or midday Stoic readings, a brief passage from Seneca or Marcus Aurelius, to remind you that your words shape your inner state. Perhaps you note a single phrase from your reading, something like, "Speak no evil, even in anger," and hold it as a motto for the day. By aligning your self-talk with these Stoic reminders, you lessen the likelihood of spouting illusions when stress mounts. And when you do slip, as we all do, you approach it with forbearance and vow to do better next time, rather than wallowing in guilt. The Stoic mind is forward-looking, seizing each new dawn as a chance to refine your moral craft. We must also consider how these illusions might appear on social media or in digital communication, where rapid interactions can fuel impulsive statements. If you sense the urge to type, "I'm better than all you amateurs," or "You're all worthless trolls," Stoic caution urges you to pause. Question the motive behind your words. If it's to assert dominance or lash out, you're likely harming both your reputation and your internal equilibrium. The Stoic practice is to see ephemeral online spats for what they are: fleeting, inconsequential battles that rarely yield understanding or virtue. Instead, you show restraint. Silence or a measured, respectful reply often resonates more powerfully. We can also glean synergy from other philosophical or spiritual traditions. For instance, many Buddhist teachings counsel mindful speech, highlighting the ripple effect a single harsh word can produce in another's mind and soul. Meanwhile, certain Christian or Islamic moral codes emphasize humility, charity, and forgiveness, echoing the Stoic condemnation of arrogance or unending grudge. So, even if one does not identify strictly as a Stoic, one might find universal moral alignment in the principle that a man's words should reflect sincerity, humility, empathy, and willingness to learn. Let me share a final story that weaves these threads together. I knew an individual who'd spent years climbing the ranks in a corporate environment, refining his interpersonal skills, yet falling prey to the illusions we've named. He habitually blamed others for setbacks, bragged about never erring, belittled subordinates as useless, and repeatedly claimed he was too busy to address fundamental issues. Over time, morale in his department plummeted, and a quiet resentment built among his team. Eventually, a crisis forced him to reevaluate. In desperation, he sought counsel from a Stoic mentor who calmly pointed out how each phrase he used, each toxic utterance, undermined trust and stifled unity. Realizing the depth of the damage, this man systematically replaced those illusions with more truthful, cooperative statements. He began owning mistakes in public forums, acknowledging he was no omniscient genius, humbly inviting help when needed, and dropping "I'm too busy" in favor of explaining priorities or reorganizing tasks. The transformation was profound. Within a year, his relationships softened, and the team became more cohesive. Even though the path was initially humbling, he emerged more respected, not less. That tale underscores how these illusions might take root in pursuit of ambition or out of plain insecurity. Yet, Stoic reflection can cut them at the root if we apply consistent effort. The result is not only a better atmosphere around us, but also a calmer interior. We awaken each morning less fearful of being found out or cornered into a contradiction. We rest each night not replaying arguments that were fueled by illusions. Freed from the clutter of these 8 statements, our minds can devote energy to truly important tasks: developing skill, forging meaningful connections, and seeking to live ethically within the ephemeral boundaries of our mortal existence. In concluding our entire conversation, recall how Stoicism stands on the premise that genuine peace arises when you align your judgments with reality. Keep your emotions under the guidance of reason, and cultivate virtue in how you treat yourself and others. The illusions we've cataloged, 8 in total, represent pockets of irrationality or defensive pride that block that alignment. By diligently removing them from your speech, you chip away at the illusions within. And each day you refrain from saying, "It's not my fault," or "I'll never forgive you." You reinforce a calmer, more humane approach to conflict and adversity. Each time you resist, "I can't change," or "I never need help," you open yourself to growth and collaboration. Every moment you skip "I'm better than everyone else," or "You're worthless," you foster a sense of justice and empathy. And each time you challenge your default claim of "I'm too busy," you take ownership of your time, refusing to hide behind busyness when confronted with new possibilities or responsibilities. None of us perfects this overnight. It may be that in a sudden confrontation, you still find yourself blurting something akin to these illusions. The Stoic method is to reflect afterward, see the slip, and vow to do better next time. Gradual improvement rather than harsh self-flagellation. Over months, these illusions fade, replaced by language that resonates with sincerity, compassion, accountability, and humility. The intangible benefit is a mind that stands more firmly on the bedrock of reality, rather than trembling on the shifting sands of self-deception or hostility. As we wrap up, let us recall that these 8 statements, though initially intended as guidelines for speech, are ultimately about shaping your entire posture toward life. They embody deeper philosophical stances: acceptance of partial responsibility, recognition of human fallibility, commitment to personal growth, openness to help, prioritizing intentionally, forgoing arrogance, honoring each person's innate dignity, and releasing grudges that poison your inner realm. A man who internalizes these lessons becomes not just a better communicator, but a more grounded and, in the Stoic sense, a more truly intelligent soul. One who navigates the vicissitudes of life with calm insight and moral conviction. So, take these reflections, carry them forward in your daily encounters. Notice when your tongue itches to unleash an illusion, and practice the Stoic pause, a single breath that can prevent so much harm. Gradually, your language will mirror a stable core, forging trust in your circles and serenity within yourself. And if ever you doubt the worth of this endeavor, remember the wise counsel of those who walked this path before. A man's speech, shaped by reason and virtue, is a window to his soul. Keep that window clean, and let your words be an honest reflection of the honorable person you strive to become. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. And if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day.